Welcome to Tu vida es tuya. Yo soy Adriana, and here I want to invite you to be honest with yourself, to take the time to reflect and be aware about what you really want. And the most important, to start taking actions because your life is yours and from no one else. Welcome to this space to reflect together. I'm really excited to have you here, and it really feels like a new beginning for me to also express myself here in English because I had just a moment. I was checking Instagram and I saw one girl posting, "Goodbye Spanish, from now on I'm going to start to do it in English." And some emotions arise in my body. And I was wondering, are you jealous? Do you want also to express yourselves only in English? And for me, it was clear, no. I love Spanish, but I also love English. And for the last years, I was so stuck thinking that I needed to choose, that this was paralyzing me. And it sounds so ridiculous now because when you are able to speak two languages, this should be an opportunity for you to be able to reach more people, to connect with more people. And in my case, it was blocking me because I was paralyzed thinking what was the right choice, thinking it needed to be one or the other, Spanish or English. And today for me was so clear. I don't want to choose. I don't need to choose. I am who I am thanks to the Spanish and thanks to the English. I couldn't be who I am without all the people I have met in the last years, without all my friends, and without the international community that I have around myself here in Fuerteventura, before in Berlin, and also while I was traveling around. So I wanted to give myself the permission to show here all myself, and in my real life, I mean, not in my real life, this is also real, but I mean, in like my daily life, I use both languages. I change from Spanish to English in one moment, maybe even in one sentence. You will see here, this is not going to be perfect English. I'm not native, and I'm also embracing that. Of course, I have an accent. You can hear I'm Spanish, and that's totally fine. Also, when I came back now, my friends were making fun of me, like somehow I forgot the word but. And I'm always saying pero. I'm like saying a sentence, and in the middle I'm like la 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 la, pero, blah, 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 blah. And this is me. And it's okay. And my main purpose here in this podcast is to share with you what is most alive in this specific moment inside myself. And today I felt it so clear that this is my channel to explore and to show all the parts of myself. And I wanted to do some episode in English. But I really don't know if this is going to be a one-time thing that I'm going to do this episode in English, or if it's something that, depending on the feedback that I get and how I feel, maybe I will do it more times. Maybe I will open myself also more on my Instagram to combine both, because I think unconsciously I was limiting myself so much with this belief that I needed to choose one or the other. And this has happened to me not only with the language, with so many things that we unconsciously think is like black or white. And instead of growing, this is making us so small, is putting us in a box. So for me, it's also a liberation to see, hey, I'm not one or the other, I'm both. And I want to play around with it. And let's see what happens. Because I think we are different when we communicate in its language. We tend to show ourselves differently depending on the environment. So I think it's also normal that depending on the language we are using to express ourselves, we are showing different parts of ourselves. And it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just different. And that's why I wanted to also do this, so you can also see my English part, and I can also be able to share my podcast with my friends, with the people who don't speak Spanish, and I still love, I adore. And this is also a way for me to tell you thank you. Thank you for being part of my life somehow. I don't know if I know you personally or if you just landed here and you don't speak Spanish, but yeah, this is for me also a way to say thank you to all my international friends because that's what made me grow the most in the last years. To give you some background from where I'm coming, when I finished university, I was 22 years old, so 10 years ago. I was feeling really insecure about my English. Of course, I have studied English during the school, but I was not feeling comfortable talking. Mainly because, yeah, my little perfectionist knew I was not doing it perfect. I'm still not doing it perfect. But this was blocking me back then because I was not practicing. I was like really good reading, writing, but I was not speaking. So I finished university and yeah, my English was really not good at all. So I decided that I will move for a few months to London and this was quite of a epic fail because this was full of Spanish people. But a few months later, I moved to Berlin. And that was the big change because I needed to choose between German or English. So, of course, all in for the English. And it was like all in completely, like working in English. So all my insecurities needed to go one side and I really needed to talk. There was no way back. I remember in that moment it was a big trigger for me in other episodes, previous ones in Spanish, I was explaining you when someone tells you something and you overreact, it's because a part of you believe these words from the other person. Because if someone tells me, for example, oh, you are Spanish. I'm like, yes, of course, this is not going to trigger me, no? But I remember back then, like some people were making fun of my accent. And right now I would say, yes, I have an accent. It's something I have totally accept. It's fine. But in that moment, it was really triggering this insecurity I had. So it was really bringing me down. So that was the situation when I finished uni. And then I went to Berlin to work. I was speaking, but I was still really insecure. But of course, when you give permissions to yourself to practice, to do things not perfect, but still do them, it will get better. And it got better, of course. And this opened so many doors for myself that now I can tell you everything that happened thanks to this. So before I keep going, I want you to stop for a moment and think about yourself 10 years ago. Which insecurities did you have? Which fears? I'm sure you're going to get surprised because when the time passes, we start to integrate so much these new parts of ourselves that sometimes we forget from where we are coming. And I think a lot of times we just go back to try to understand some of our traumas or some of our fears, but we don't do this so often to also come back to cheer ourselves, to celebrate ourselves, to have choose not the easiest path, but the path that brought us here. So I'm sure you have many examples, as my little example with the, and it's not so little, you know, I'm really used to say, oh, this is little. It's not little. I'm going to also say, this is big for me. Because I promise you, I have always been like such a good student, blah, blah, blah. But English was like my, oh no, I'm not good at this, and na, na, na. And I was like putting it on aside. And I could have keep doing that. But what I mean is like if I have done that, I would have never traveled alone to Asia. I would have traveled alone maybe somewhere else, but not to that specific place. I wouldn't have done my yoga teacher training in English. I wouldn't have moved on my own to Berlin, to Lisbon, to Fuerteventura right now. You know, it's like I would have missed so much. And it's not only about the moving, mainly it's because all the people you can meet. Because this is what makes you who you are. The people you meet and how we influence each other, how we inspire each other, and how we make each other grow. That's the biggest life change. And when you are able to communicate with others, you are opening yourself for this. That's why giving permission to yourself to start to do things imperfectly is so important, because until you don't start, you cannot get better at it. This was my example with the language, but I want you to go back to your own example. How were you 10 years ago and how are you now? And I invite you to write down 10 things that you feel most proud of. 10 things you have achieved during these years that make you feel proud right now. And this is a moment to celebrate yourself because it's something we don't do. And I think it's a practice about everything we have done. Because after some time, we start to give it for granted. We integrate it so much that we already see it as a part of ourselves. What is awesome, that this celebration, it's also opening our eyes to what is possible for us. Because sometimes we want to have all the answers right now. We want to have all the solutions right now. And all we have to do is to start to see what we already have and to start. You don't need to have all the answers. You didn't have all the answers 10 years ago. You had no idea where this first step, this first decision, where was bringing you. And it brought you here. And now when you write down, really, if you want, you can do it now, you can do it tonight, you can do it whenever it's better for you, but really give this present to yourself. Give yourself some minutes to stop, to take a paper, to take a pen. You can put some music if you want. You can go close to the sea and write down. Write down these 10 things because you are going to see with perspective everything that happened, everything you have been through. And I'm sure it has been a lot. And I'm sure you have a lot of reasons to feel proud about yourself. So once you have more awareness about your past, also when you think about your future desires, your future vision, you can also have the trust that it's possible. And it's not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen overnight. But you have the choice now to start. And once you start, you open yourself for this opportunity. You open yourself for the unknown. You give yourself permission to start, imperfectly, but to start. Because only when we look back, you can connect the dots. It's really not possible to connect the dots forward. But when you look back, you see how every step had a sense and everything brought you until here. And we have so much power inside ourselves. I'm sure you also have these examples in your life that you are like, oh my God, how I did this, how I was so strong. Like in the moment you just go through it, and then when you look back, you surprise yourself about your own strength, about your own resilience, about everything you went through. So at the same time that you are celebrating yourself for all you have done in these 10 years, and also you are giving credit to yourself, that is something we normally don't do, and it's really, really important to build your self-confidence, to be aware about everything you can really do because you have done already a lot. Also, I want you to be explorative and maybe to find something as I have done with this blockage that I had about the language, that I was so focused, so thinking that I needed to choose one or the other. And it's so stupid because it's actually a strength. It's not something that is limiting myself. So I want you also to be explorative and maybe to find something with new eyes. Something that paralyzed you before, and now with perspective, you are able to see it on a different way. And to say, well, wait a minute. is this a problem or is actually an opportunity and is something that it can open more doors for me? Because it's super interesting how unconsciously we tend to go into this separation, into dividing the things with others and also within ourselves. Instead of seeing ourselves as a whole, we tend to see like, okay, this part is for this part is for that. And once we are able to change the perspective and we are also able to accept all of these parts because all of this is making us who we are, making us unique and making us human. That's the most interesting because at the end we all share the same. We all share this part of ourselves that we want to hide because we believe if other people see them, they are not going to love us, we are not going to be accepted. And it's funny because if we share them, we liberate ourselves and also we liberate others. So in this specific case, for me, this is giving me freedom to remember to myself, like, Adri, you don't need to put yourself in a box. You don't need to say, okay, this is for the Spanish community, this is for the English community. Now I can only communicate in one language. No, you can do whatever you want and whatever you feel like in every moment. And this gives you so much freedom and so much flexibility and so much joy because you also know that you don't need to choose one thing forever. I was telling at the beginning, I was so afraid of making the wrong choice, but there's no wrong choice. The only right choice is what it feels best for you right now. And maybe tomorrow it's something completely different. So it's the key of starting and also to know that the path is going to change because you are constantly changing. So it's completely natural that your path towards your vision is going to change. And it's not going to change once or twice. It's going to change so many times. But I think this is the most interesting, that when we are open and we accept things as they come, we also get surprised here and we find out like, oh my God, this can be even better than I could have ever imagined. But for this happening, we really have to be open. We really have to trust. And we really have to start. So this was the beginning of showing a new part of myself. I hope you enjoyed this first episode in English, maybe the last, maybe not, who knows? But in any case, I would really like to hear your feedback. For me, this is super important to know how you are receiving these words, what resonate with you the most. You can always write me on Instagram. My Instagram is Adriana _Vázquez _González. So I'm going to check how to say this word in English. Okay, so apparently is underscore. So my Instagram is Adriana _Vázquez _González. I will leave you the link on the description of this episode. As I told you before, my main purpose here is to share what is most alive inside myself. And right now is this giving me permission to explore, to play more, and to open my mind that I don't have to choose one thing to another. And that's what I wish for you right now too. To be more explorative and to see what's on the other side of the limitations that you are putting to yourself. Because at the end, we tend to be our biggest limitation. And for sure, it's a constant process. But I wish that this will encourage to take at least the first action, because your life is yours and from no one else. Tu vida es tuya, and you are the only one who is responsible for it. So go and live it and enjoy it and embrace all the paths that you can take. Un abrazo enorme, 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 enorme.